And thanks, Tucker, and welcome to Hannity, the great one, a rare appearance, Mark Levin. He'll be here in just a minute, but first, it's time to cut through all the clutter, break down what we know about wiretapping and politically motivated investigation by the Obama administration. And that is tonight's opening monologue. All right, so over the weekend, President Donald Trump set off a firestorm. He tweeted the following, quote, "How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This Nixon, Watergate, bad or sick guy?" Now, predictably, the left, Democrats, their cronies at the alt-left propaganda, destroy Trump media, they went into full-on meltdown mode and declared the president to be a liar once again. Now, there's also been some pushback from the FBI Director James Comey. We'll get to that in a minute. And now, for weeks on this program, on my radio show, I've been discussing what I call Obama's shadow government and the career bureaucrats who are actively working against President Trump from inside the government. Many of these are people that are President Obama holdovers. And I've been telling you about we, the people, that there are other people in the intelligence community purposely leaking information to try and damage and destroy President Trump and the advisors, of course, that surround him. One by one, every advisor. They have been smeared. They have been slandered. They have been besmirched, even his children, even his wife and daughter. We've also been reporting on how the alt-left propaganda, destroy Trump media, is colluding with these leakers and deep state bureaucrats with the sole purpose of stopping President Trump's agenda to try and delegitimize the president with the hopes of eventually removing the president from power, overturning a free election. Now, is this a conspiracy theory, paranoia? No. Why? There's a disturbing pattern that's going on here. Now, let's take a look at the case of former Trump National Security Advisor. That's retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Remember news reports? A December call Flynn made to the Russian ambassador, captured by what the New York Times described as a, quote, routine wiretap of Russian diplomats and that phone? Well, now, it's not out of the ordinary, by the way, of our government to monitor foreign officials. That's a smart thing they do. But protections, which are known as minimization procedures, have been put in place to protect Americans that are not under warrant, American citizens that are caught up in their surveillance. And by the way, that their identities are protected, their constitutional rights are to be protected. Now, this, of course, was not the case with Lieutenant General Flynn, because we know a transcript of his call was created and then given to intelligence officials who then leaked this information, which is a felony, to the press that printed it. Now, back in February, when all this was going down, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, and that's Congressman Devin Nunes, he called it, quote, unprecedented. And then he joined us on this show to explain. Let's take a look. Isn't this the type of thing where if you have rogue intelligence people and they're illegally intercepting phone calls of Americans, that's the illegal. And this, in other words, if in fact they wanted to get the intel or for example, hack into the phone of, in this particular case, General Flynn, wouldn't they have to get a court subpoena to do so?
That's correct, and I am not aware that they did that. So my guess is that the intelligence agencies did not do this. What I'm assuming is that this was picked up as they were tracking someone else. And if that's the case, that would have had to go up to the highest levels of the Obama administration to get approval to unmask who that person is. And in this case, it was General Flynn.
Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, Fox News has not been able to confirm this, but the day before the election, November 7, 2016, the website Heat Street, they published a report. It had the following headline, quote, exclusive, FBI granted FISA warrant covering Trump camp's ties to Russia. And according to Heat Street, in October 2016, the Obama administration went to the FISA court, which grants warrants for surveillance for potential spies or terrorists to monitor, which Heat Street described as, quote, U.S. persons in Donald Trump's campaign with ties to Russia. Now, this was part of a larger probe into Russian banks. Now, other outlets like the BBC, The Guardian, have also reported that a FISA court warrant was in fact granted. And this is not an isolated incident either. There are countless examples of various federal agencies under President Obama looking into activities of intercepting communications with people associated with the Trump campaign. For example, McClatchy, D.C., posted a story back in January, headline, quote, FBI, 5 other agencies probe possible covert Kremlin aid to Trump. On the day of the inauguration, January 20th, the front page of the New York Times ran an article with this headline, wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides. There's also explosive reports from the Times. The alt-left, propaganda, destroy Trump at all costs media has given very little coverage to. In other words, it's not the right-wing conspiracy, it's them. It reads in part, quote, in its final days, the Obama administration expanded the power of the National Security Agency to share globally intercepted personal communications with the government's 16 other intelligence agencies before applying privacy protections. Now, why would President Obama wait until the last minute, 2 weeks before he's leaving office, to issue that order? An order that did not apply to him for 8 years? To me, the opinion is obvious. He wanted as much information, whether it's true or not, to be available to his appointed deep state shadow government officials so they can do exactly what we're seeing, leak it to the press and try and hurt the president with less likelihood that they're going to get caught. Now, listen closely as I read this statement that was released by Obama's spokesperson over the weekend. Pay very close attention. A cardinal rule of the Obama administration was that no White House official ever interfered with any independent investigation led by the Department of Justice. As part of that practice, neither President Obama nor any White House official ever, keywords, ordered surveillance on any U.S. citizen. Any suggestion otherwise is simply false. Okay, they didn't order it. Did they know about it? That statement never said that President Obama did not know about it, just that he didn't order it. Even President Obama's former speechwriter noted this on Twitter this past weekend. Now, the question that we need answered is very simple and very basic, and it's this. Did, in fact, the President of the United States, what did he know and when did he know it? In other words, did the President have any answers about the surveillance of an opposition candidate in the middle of an election? Now, the American people deserve the truth. But he doesn't have much credibility on the issue. Why? Because his administration wiretapped the phone of our own colleague, James Rosen. There's also former Attorney General Michael Mukasey, who knows a thing or two about this entire process. Here's what he said.
This is the difference between being correct and being right. I think the president was not correct, certainly, in saying that President Obama ordered a tap on a server in Trump Tower. However, I think he's right in that there was surveillance and that it was conducted at the behest of the attorney of the Justice Department through the FISA court.
And what do you base that on?
I base that on news reports that you mentioned in the last spot. I also base it on a kind of inadvertent blurting out by Adam Schiff that his committee wants to talk to the counterintelligence agents at the FBI who were involved in this. Now, what that means is that this is part not of a criminal investigation, but of an intelligence gathering investigation.
By the way, didn't she cry the night of election night? All right, we'll put that aside. All right, on top of all of this, there's a bunch of other questions that need answers. What did President Obama know about these reported, New York Times reported FISA requests targeting associates of then candidate Donald Trump? Now, to me, what happened to retired Lieutenant General Flynn and what we are now seeing with all these other intelligence leaks, this is a canary in a coal mine. This accusation that President Trump made is serious. We need to get to the bottom of what the truth is and where all of this came from and who knew what, when, and where. Here now with reaction from Levin TV, his studio in Virginia, the host of Levin TV, CRTV Network. I call him the Great One. You know what it's like to get you on the show? It's like pulling teeth. You know that? We're glad to have you back, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm laying out the basics here. You put together in a very comprehensive way, and I give you a lot of credit for putting all this together. This isn't the right-wing conspiracy. This isn't conservative Sean Hannity, conservative Mark Levin. This is the New York Times. This is McClatchy. Explain.
And yet it's only conservatives who are concerned about what they're reading in liberal media outlets. Have you noticed that? The media is very confounded right now. They're very confused. They don't know whether to trash themselves, trash their colleagues, or what. Now, you asked a question. You said, what did Obama know? We know he knows this much. Everything you just read, he knew, because it's in the newspapers. That's pretty big. Number two, we know that if a FISA warrant was secured, it's very likely in his daily intelligence briefing or a call from the Attorney General or the Director of the FBI, the President would be given a heads up. There's nothing illegal about it, but he'd be given a heads up. Here's what else we know. There's all kinds of, based on these reports, investigative activities going on. You know, McClatchy reported the agencies involved, the FBI, CIA, National Security Agency, Justice Department, Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I assume Obama knew something. I mean, unless he's Helen Keller. Now, let me make another point about this. That's a hell of a lot of agency resources. Those are a hell of a lot of investigators. The news reports, you mentioned the New York Times, January 20th. I just want to make sure CNN and MSNBC are aware of this.
They watch all the time,
somewhat
Mark.
illiterate.
Nobody's watching them. Go ahead.
Wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides. I never said independent of news reports about the wiretap. Wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides. Well, didn't Mr. Clapper say there were no FISA orders issued? Can you play that tape for me so I can comment on that and pull this together?
I think we have that loaded, and because he said it on Meet the Press this weekend. But we'll get it in a second.
It's very profound.
Yeah, well, but we'll get to that in a second. Go ahead.
But let me comment on it. It's very, very important.
Yeah.
It's very important because if Clapper says there was no FISA order, and he was very broad and he was very definite, and he said, no, I don't remember this, and you'll play it later, then what the hell are we talking about? That means they didn't have enough information for probable cause to get a warrant in front of the FISA court. So what's the FBI, the CIA, the National Security Agency, the Justice Department, the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network investigating? What are these wiretaps that the New York Times is talking about? You know, I know they want to focus on Donald Trump and his tweet. I want to focus on America and the Constitution. The reason I got fed up with this last week is I'm a constitutional conservative. I look at this. If I'm reading these news reports, we have a runaway executive branch. I don't know who knows what. And as of today, the media don't appear to know who knows what, which is exactly why I've been calling for congressional investigations. The question is, why aren't CNN, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, and all the rest of them, why aren't they concerned about this?
Mark,
rather than mock the president and his tweet, pay attention to what your own reporters and other reporters are saying.
So what you say is really deep and profound here, and I want to put some emphasis on this, and that is that the news media reported the leaks, the news media reported the surveillance, they reported it repeatedly. This is the mainstream media. As far as I know, they've never retracted the story, and everybody knew about it. It was not something that was hidden. Now, in fact, Donald Trump mentions that, in fact, it happened, and somehow this is, oh my gosh, this is outrageous. What do we, how do we definitively find out that, in fact, in June and again in October, there were attempts to surveil the then candidate of the opposition party by the current administration at the time, the Obama administration?
Well, two things need to happen one way or another. Number one, the FISA applications, which Clapper denies, by the way. He denies, and the follow-up was pathetic over there at NBC, but we'll get to that. The FISA applications should be released. That's number one. The warrant that was supposedly secured in October should be released. The other thing that needs to be done is these daily presidential briefings that the president received, that the intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies coordinate on and prepare. The Intelligence Committee chairmen need to read them. And now we'll get to the bottom of this. Now, I find it very interesting. People are saying, well, let Trump release the damn FISA stuff. Can you imagine if he does that? He'd be accused of interfering with investigations, trying to intimidate the Justice Department. No. Let Congress finally step up and do its job. They have oversight committees. We pay these people to do their jobs. Now get into those damn FISA applications.
Isn't the
Look at the so-called warrant. Hold on now.
Yeah.
Look at the warrant that was released. Look at these daily briefings, and let's see what's in them.
All right, great one. We miss having you on. Stay right there. We're going to keep you while we got you. All right, more with the great one, Mark Levin, right after the break. Also tonight, Jay Sekulow, former NSA intelligence official. He actually created this very law. We'll get into that. They're here to react to President Trump and his wiretapping accusations. Also tonight, Republicans now trying to make good on their promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. Earlier this evening, GOP lawmakers unveiled their plan to dismantle this disastrous health care law, at least the parameters of which they're going to work. Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas and North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows will join us with reaction. That and more, and a new executive order has been released by the president today. Straight ahead.
Speak officially anymore, but I will say that for the part of the national security apparatus that I oversaw as DNI, there was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign. I can't speak for other Title III authorized entities in the government or a state or local entity.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if the FBI, for instance, had a FISA court order of some sort for a surveillance, would that be information you would know or not know?
Yes.
You would be told this.
I would know that.
If there was a FISA court order
Yes.
on something like this.
Something like this, absolutely.
And at this point, you can't confirm or deny whether that exists?
I can deny it.
Well, wait a minute. He's contradicting himself. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper yesterday on Meet the Press. We continue with the great one, Mark Levin, from his TV studio in Virginia. You know, so Obama gives a statement that says they didn't order it. Doesn't mean he doesn't know it. Clapper puts out all these caveats here. Well, the part I oversaw, I can't speak officially.
Let me
go ahead.
Let me take it differently. I accept everything that James Clapper said, and it contradicts every piece of significant reporting over the last 6 months. If he's saying there was no FISA application, there was no FISA warrant, then why have so many news entities said that there are? That's number one. And number two, why didn't Chuck Todd have Mr. Clapper on weeks ago, before I did my radio show, before Donald Trump tweeted? Why didn't he have him on weeks ago to disclaim that this FISA court stuff was hanging out there? Let me explain something where we are here, Sean. They're all pivoting, including the media. They were trying to present the case of overwhelming connections, overwhelming concern, overwhelming potential evidence of Trump and the campaign involved with the Russians. Now it's, wait a minute, no. Because I say these are police state tactics. Look at all this. You have no basis for all these investigations. Now they're saying, wait a minute, we didn't have a FISA warrant. We didn't do these wiretaps, eavesdropping, electronic surveillance. Now the media are completely confounded. Chuck Todd said, I got him now. I got the Trump guys now. And I'm by the way, I endorsed Cruz, just so the libs know, during the Republican primaries. And I want our president to succeed. This is about the Constitution.
Well, you also voted for
it?
Trump. You told your audience.
Well,
I think
absolutely.
That's right.
So which is it? Which is it? Were there FISA warrants or not? Now, if there weren't, why didn't you report that weeks ago? If there are, some of us would like to see them. So we have a real problem right now. The media is turning on the media. We have leaks coming out that are felonies. We have stories about 6 federal departments and agencies, intelligence and law enforcement, that were investigating something, somebody, by somehow. So what's the answer? That's why we need to get to the bottom of this.
Mark,
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead. You be the host.
Why all the investigations? Is there any evidence? Was there
Mark,
any
this is important.
evidence, scintilla of evidence? Hold on, I just need to finish my sentence. Was there any evidence, a scintilla of evidence at all, that Trump, his campaign advisors,
None.
and his transition
None.
team were on the take?
None.
Okay. Then why are 6 federal departments and agencies involved in an investigation, and now Clapper says he doesn't know anything?
This is profound for a lot of different ways, because we're talking about Fourth Amendment protections, First Amendment protections, Fifth Amendment protections, Sixth Amendment protections. There's so many, and the question that every American needs to know.
Now, we're talking about police state tactics.
I understand. And
by an executive branch,
all of that is
potentially.
true. Because if they can do what they did to Michael Flynn, General Flynn, and that is here, whenever they have every right to go after a Russian ambassador. But the law, the Espionage Act is clear that if they hear and identify an American on that line, they are not allowed to tape that American, and they're supposed to follow a process called minimization. Why does this matter? Because this is unreasonable search and seizure. And if they can do it to a presidential candidate, right? Now, either they did it or they didn't. Now, if they didn't do it, then that means the New York Times owes the country an apology. That means every major newspaper and every major network owes the American people an apology, right?
Here's the New York Times, January 20th. Wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides. You read this earlier. One paragraph, please. The FBI is leading the investigations, aided by the National Security Agency, the CIA, the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Unit. More. The investigators have accelerated their effort. This is on Inauguration morning, front page above the fold. The investigators have accelerated their efforts in recent weeks, but have found no conclusive evidence of wrongdoing, the official said. One official said, listen to this, intelligence reports based on some of the wiretap communications have been provided to the White House. Now, I didn't write that. You didn't write that. I asked Mr. Clapper, The FBI is leading an investigation. Did you know about that, sir? Aided by the NSA. Did you know about that, sir? And the CIA. Did you know about that, sir? And the Treasury Department. Did you know about that, sir? Did you know that one official said intelligence reports based on some of the wiretap communications had been provided to the White House? Did you know about that? And Chuck Todd, why didn't you ask him these questions? That's my question. Why are the media so lackadaisical and not curious?
You know, because you put all this together and you made such a compelling prosecutorial case here that it can't be argued intelligently because it's either one or the other. But then you get attacked by these little pipsqueaks on television. Let's go to one example.
There's a lot of.
What does the White House gain by the President of by Steve Bannon most likely handing the President of the United States a Breitbart article and talking about what a rabid right-wing talk show host has been theorizing?
Liberal Joe is Joe's calling you a rabid right-wing host, Mark.
Well, he's a chameleon. But let me just say this, Joe. Here's what I do know. You remember the movie Deliverance? The guy with the guitar on the bridge?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Joe's the splitting image, isn't he? Yes, he's the splitting image.
Okay. Listen, I got to go. I'm out of TV. Will you come on the show more often? Because if I don't pressure you publicly, you won't come on. You're invited on all the time. You're one of my best friends, and you never come on the show. Tell the audience why.
We got Levin TV right here, baby. CRTV.
You can still come on this show
I'll
occasionally.
come on more often.
All right. Great one.
Yes,
By the way, there's a reason I call you the great one. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
You too.
Very compelling. Coming up next, more reaction to President Trump's claim that he was wiretapped by the Obama administration. Jay Sekulow, Bill Binney, a former NSA intelligence official, will join us next. Also, two Republican lawmakers, Congressman Louis Gohmert and Mark Meadows, will join us on the Obamacare replacement plan, at least the outline of it, straight ahead.
The President's been very clear, as we've stated, that I think there's enough there that we want the House and Senate Intelligence to use the resources they do to make sure that they look into this matter. I mean, there's some. Anyway, I do not want to get ahead of where they may go with this or what they may look at, but I'm going to leave it to them. If we start down the rabbit hole of discussing some of this stuff, I think that we end up in a very difficult place.
That was White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer earlier today talking about President Trump's wiretapping claims. Joining us now from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow is back with us. Former intelligence official at the National Security Agent Bill Binney is with us. Jay, let me go back to my monologue. I thought Mark did a really good job of breaking down the media. This is the liberal media. But let's get back to deep state, shadow government, and the fact that you have all these Obama holdovers. You have 500 people that need to be confirmed. The majority, only last week did we get Carson and Rick Perry, and all these people, all these lifetime bureaucrats, and now all these intelligence leaks. All of them are a felony, are they not?
They are a felony, and you've got basically unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats deep within the government. We called it, and you correctly said it, as shadow government. And these bureaucrats are not in lockstep at all with this administration. In fact, they're counter to it. So in their view, they're saving the country because they're going to oppose the president. So then you have the leaks. And I think the most telling aspect of this, Sean, something you and I have talked about several times, and that is 17 days before President Obama leaves office. 17 days before he leaves office. He'd been in office almost eight full years. He changes the way in which signal intel is distributed. It used to just go, since the Reagan era, it used to just go to the NSA. They would decide where the raw data would go. And he changes it with 17 days left so that 17 additional agencies get it, which of course makes it much more difficult to determine who is engaged in the leaks. But what's getting lost in this entire discussion, and that's what I think we have to focus on,
Bill Binney,
is that this information is being leaked.
It's
Period.
being
and
leaked,
that is
and
a
it's
felony.
leaked selectively, and like in the case of General Flynn, things that should never have been leaked and never have been.
Not.
This is unprecedented. Bill Binney, didn't you help write this 78 FISA law?
No, I didn't. I didn't have anything to do with that law, but I was fairly familiar with it when I was in NSA.
Okay,
though.
and you served for 32 years. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I thought I read that earlier today.
Yep.
But for 32 years, and then you retired. Why?
I retired in October 2001 because they started spying on everybody in the United States. All the U.S. citizens, there was the bulk data, collection of metadata. That was what the Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruled illegal.
In other words,
just in 2015.
It's your belief that every American citizen, that all of this data, all of our cell phone calls, all of our text messages, and all of our emails, it is your belief, and one of the reasons you retired, because you could not live with this any longer, is that every American, that all of this is being saved and stored?
That's correct. And that's also what I put in a sworn affidavit for the Jewell versus NSA lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of this collection.
Well, I mean, I find this pretty, you know, here you are, a highly placed NSA official, then become a whistleblower. From what I understood, you are the architect of the NSA surveillance program in some way, so maybe I misspoke in exactly what I was saying. But so you're saying that even today, that would mean, by the way, that James Clapper committed perjury because he said it wasn't happening. Did he commit perjury in your view?
He was talking about he was talking about a FISA court order. This is all this collection is being done under Executive Order 12333.
No, well,
Section 23C.
Yeah, but he also said the Director Clapper actually testified that there was not bulk data collections, and then had to correct his testimony when the WikiLeaks information came out. So this is not exactly the most credible source.
Jay, what laws do you believe are broken?
No, that's true.
What laws do you believe are broken here?
Well, I mean, I think, look, anytime you're sharing national security information or classified information, you're talking about, you know, espionage. I mean, this is the stuff that
this is the
movies are
Espionage
made
Act
out of,
we're talking
except
about.
They're felonies.
In other words, what they released on General Flynn was a violation of the Espionage Act.
Correct, a violation of the Espionage Act. And every time they did it, by the way, it was a violation. It's not just one time. So you're talking about multiple felonies. You're talking about what needs to be taking place right now. And I have complete confidence in Attorney General Sessions. And that is an investigation not done the way Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch did it, by actually impaneling a grand jury, getting subpoena power, find out who leaked the information, prosecute them to the full extent of the law.
And you believe, as
if
I
they're
do,
found guilty, they pay the penalty.
when they expanded Executive Order 12333 in the final 2 weeks of Obama's administration, that was done to make it more difficult to identify those people who they knew would be leaking?
Sure.
What other reason would they do it?
Well, that's the only reason, because what it did was it took a very small pool of people and increased it 17-fold. So it makes it much more difficult. But it doesn't make it impossible. And to prevent a constitutional showdown, to prevent a constitutional crisis, the Attorney General knows what he needs to do.
So you believe there's the shadow government.
Because
So
at
if
the end of
Donald
the day,
Trump is
what you
wrong,
have here is the leaking of classified information. It's a felony.
So if Donald Trump, real quick, is wrong, that would mean that the New York Times was wrong. That would mean that McClatchy was wrong. That would mean
that the president to release information, Sean, are making. He can, if there's an ongoing investigation, the president shouldn't be giving information out. That, I think, would be inappropriate. I think turning over to Congress, the president.
And the statement of the president this weekend, the former president, was meaningless when he said he didn't direct it. All right, Bill Binney, let me go back to you. What Executive Order 12333? It was revised in the final 2 weeks of the Obama presidency, as you know. But you believe it is that executive order, EO 12333. You believe it is that executive order that allows our government to literally wiretap and metadata store every phone call of every citizen, every text, every email? That's your belief? That's happening?
It's actually Section 23C that actually says if you have the intent to find a drug dealer, for example, in a 64 fiber line or a 10 gigabit line, if you believe there's a drug dealer in there, you can go in and collect all the data on the line, store it, mine it, and do whatever you want to with it, and preserve it, even though the vast, say 99.999% of it is domestic communications.
Unbelievable. All right.
I mean, this is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. I mean, even...
so every phone conversation I have in my life, do you believe has been taped?
Without warrants, yes, that's right. And also, Adrian Kinney and David Murphy-Falk were transcribers down at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Their testimonies on the web, where they were transcribing phone calls between U.S. citizens and NGOs with no warrant whatsoever. And this has been going on, for years.
We better get to the bottom of this. All right. Thank you all for being with us. Appreciate it. We got a long way to go here. And by the way, you won't hear this on the major networks. I can't wait for the New York Times to apologize or to confirm their original reports. Coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
I am also calling on this Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare.
The president promising that he would repeal and replace Obamacare. Tonight, congressional Republicans have released their plan to do just that. Up next, two Republican lawmakers, Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert, North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows, are here with reaction. Later, Matt and Mercedes Schlapp join us. That's all straight ahead.